I had a text from my brother saying that my father had passed away. I got up and he came to me. But he comes up and he goes, "Tell mom it's even better than we thought it would be."
Aspen Roots.
Welcome to another Aspen Roots podcast. We're your hosts, Brandon and Sophia, and we are so excited today to welcome our guest, Janet Bedingfield, to the podcast. Welcome, Janet.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you, Janet. Janet is a fellow Barbara Brennan School of Healing graduate. She is from Northern Colorado, and she is an energy healer, and she offers private sessions both in person and online. And her healing sessions use a fusion of different healing modalities directed by her 7 healing guides. Her purpose in her daily life is bringing in and emanating divine light while reflecting others' light back to them so that they might see themselves through the Creator's eyes and realize their own divinity through it. What a beautiful mission.
Thank you. I feel honored to be called to that mission.
And we'll have all of Janet's links in the description below. And so Janet's here today with a number of what I feel comfortable saying mind-blowing stories of all sorts of different categories. And so buckle up, get ready. We got multiple stories here. And Janet, please take us into your first story.
Okay. I thought I'd start with what it's like to be a medical intuitive, and I know that Brandon and Sophia understand this. Probably one of the most interesting things I've done in terms of medical intuition is to read plants. I'm real fortunate in that I get all the clairs, but I don't get taste a lot. And I was asked to read a plant, and I got a really strong mineral flavor where the bitter senses are back at the back of your tongue. And I was given the term nitrogen, and I think it needed more than that. But I think that is such a fascinating thing to become a part of what we know as a living entity, but to actually experience it was phenomenal. And then another time I was in Sedona, and there was this gorgeous, we were on a retreat, gorgeous weeping willow tree that was on kind of a little peninsula that went out into a pond. And we meditated with the tree and had the experience of knowing that it was feeling separated from all of the other trees because it was out on this peninsula, and it's Sedona. So there's not a lot of water, but it was so grateful to have us interact with it. And it was so beautiful. There were 4 of us, and all of us got the same reading from the tree. It was just an incredible experience to connect like that. The tree energy wrapped around me and held me and spoke to me in words that I could understand. So that was really neat.
Wow. I love that.
That is phenomenal. I love the validation of having 4 people read one tree and getting the same thing.
Yes, it was incredible. Yeah. and
So
also kind of
beautiful.
different aspects of the same thing, which deepened it and broadened it, the experience. Yeah.
Interesting.
I wanted to go on and explain a little bit more about medical intuition. And I just thought it'd be fun to know some examples. For example, one woman, I entered into her space and she was having trouble with her neck. And what I saw looked like a pile of gravel cascading away from a wall. And it took me a minute. That's, it's like playing charades with the divine. All of the high sense or extra sense perception is like playing charades with the divine with my guides. And they're really good at helping me. Sometimes I think I'm a little slow on the uptake. It turned out to be osteoporosis. And it took me a minute. I'm like, what would present like a pile of gravel coming off of her neck bones? And it turned out had been diagnosed with osteoporosis, but she was questioning it, and I did not know that. Another one that I had was a gal who had, within 10 days, had gotten COVID, and then 10 days later had fallen down a flight of stairs and gotten a pretty severe concussion. And so we did some digging, which is theta healing, one of the modalities I'm trained in. And we discovered that a lack of worthiness to quit the job she was in and pursue her dream and something she really liked because she had her master's and her parents had extremely high expectations of her. So she's coming up against absolutely being burned out at her job, like hardly able to function. Then got COVID and 10 days later fell down the stairs. And so by the time she came to me, she was no longer able to work. She had post-concussive syndrome. And when I went into her, what I saw was a thought form the size of a large russet potato on the right side of her head. And she later told me she'd had tightness and headaches. She was having migraines 3, 4 times a week, sometimes going on for more than a day. And I found this thought form and I hesitated because it was so large and it was in her brain. And so, what you guys know as well as fifth level guides, which are not my healing guides, but another team that comes in and does surgery, actually removed that thought form and then wrapped it in what looked like energetic ace bandage to hold that space. And they told me that it would disintegrate slowly, and later told me it probably about 3 months, so that she could integrate this huge change that was coming to her by removing this thought form. And the thought form had been formed by experiences as young as 2 years old, where, for example, in one situation, she was blamed for something she didn't do, and her father beat her for it while her mother, who had done it, watched. So you can see where that would start a really long cycle. So that was an incredible experience to go in and see that and then be able to watch it being resolved. And I did warn her, you may have a headache. Well, she did. She detoxed so quickly. She had joint aches and body aches and headaches, but a different kind of headache. And after 2 days, it resolved, and it was a huge transformation for her. Yeah.
Wow. And so was she able to make the shift out of that job that wasn't serving her?
She is still in the process, but yes, she did quit the job, and
Okay.
she's we're still working together. So
Okay.
And then was this done all remotely?
so the first session was in person. The one where the surgery happened was not in person. That was remote. You're right.
Okay, I just want to add a little more context so we can hit the understanding of all of our audience here. When Janet says entering her client, it's like with awareness, you enter into their energy and then you can do work there. And this is something that can be done remotely, or long distance is another way of saying that.
Also, intention plays a big role in that as well.
Absolutely. Focus, intention, and then fifth level guides. I know that's hitting a lot of curiosity with many people. And so fifth level guides is when you hold a certain frequency. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but you hold a certain frequency, and then the guides are able to enter through the back of our neck chakra and then work their energy through our hands and then work on the client that way. And it's a really interesting procedure, especially to those like Janet who have this strong sense of clairvoyance and can see the work being done. And that was really incredible how you described that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an incredible experience. And those are, I think I said it, but those are not my typical healing guides. They come in to do surgery. And interestingly, most of the time I get to watch it, but not all the time. Sometimes, maybe once or twice, I haven't been allowed to watch it, and I didn't really understand why. Interesting.
That is.
That is interesting.
And that reminds me of something you said at the beginning with the gravel coming off the neck bones. Sometimes getting guidance is the easy part, and then interpreting it is the confusing part or the challenging part. And that's an experience we certainly have.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to decipher whether it's ours or our clients. And then we have to realize, is it a literal symbol or is it symbolic, is what I mean. Is it a symbolic,
Yes.
what we're seeing, or is it literal interpretation of the actual body that we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess I'll move on and talk about being a psychic. The way that I interpret being a psychic is you read another person. And sometimes the psychic medium difference is minor, but essentially being a medium is communicating with those who have transitioned to non-physical, whereas psychic is reading the person themselves. Although sometimes I'm not sure if that can happen with someone who is on the other side. You're still reading more like the personality that they are.
Mm.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about a woman that I had never met. All I had was her first name, and I was not with her. So all I had was her name, and I had to read her. I was introduced to her by voice only. And then we were supposed to get a reading on that person. This was actually part of a class. And I got a vision of this woman in a field with 3 or 4 children around her. And she was dressed like she was a pioneer. She was out in the dirt in the field. And I could feel the overwhelm. I could feel that she was trying to tend to the kids and get the farm work done and all the different things. And there was a lot more to it than this, but it became very clear to me that she felt very much that her value, her primary or maybe her only value, was in her productivity. And so when I then later got on with this woman and got to talk with her, it turned out that she was in Illinois, was raised by, her father was a dairy farmer. So she was raised, if anybody knows anything about dairy farming, it's extremely hard work. And the cows can't wait. You're there milking twice a day. So she'd worked really hard growing up. And currently she was living in a small farm with small children, and they raised all of
Mm.
their own food. So they had cows, they had ducks, they had chickens, they had lamb, and it's exactly the way she was feeling. So that was
Wow.
me reading her, but also tapping into what was likely a past life.
Wow, that's fascinating. A, how you saw it, but also you felt it. And then the overlap between a past life and how she's living
Mhm.
her life now. And then just the message of it. Like, how many of us in today's busy world also feel that our value comes from our productivity? So that's really powerful with lots of implications there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you saw the past life and then she has this life, which is very similar. So it's like she's maybe trying to work out the karma of that. And you maybe gave her a piece of the puzzle that may help her work out the karma of her values not tied to her productivity. And maybe she can find that she can enjoy life a little more or tap into what really makes her happy, what's her soul's longing or her way she wants to express herself. Just have a different expression of self versus just the day-to-day life.
Sophia, I think you're exactly right. That's exactly what it did was it offered her an awareness from which to work. And yeah, and
Mhm.
all of those things you said. And it was really fun to get that past life experience. And I don't think I've ever gotten a past life experience that wasn't directly related to what was pertinent in the current time, in the current healing session, which makes sense to me because that way they're helpful. They're not just entertainment.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, not a
Absolutely.
distraction.
Yeah. And your ability to get so detailed off of just a name and a phone call is really important to the client because it's validating.
Yes.
And so they know you can't make that stuff up. They know you're right about that. You couldn't have known it. And then they're going to take the message a lot more seriously as a result, I think.
Really good point. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah.
Well, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. Because there's so much joy, you guys know, as a healer in using any of these modalities. I mean, I do it because I want people to know it's possible. I do it because I found this on my own healing journey and I want to make life a little easier, that path a little easier and more straightforward for others. So it brings me a lot of joy to see people make
Mhm.
that connection and gain that awareness and move ahead with it.
And I think it's just like about giving people pieces to know themselves better internally, like not about what they're doing day to day, but who they really are on the inside and tapping into that and really being seen by someone who doesn't know them is very powerful.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a guide. You know, they call us healers. I even call myself a healer, but really, I'm a conduit of divine energy and I connect the client to the divine so that they can be shown what they need to see to gain awareness and further their awakening. But I'm just the guide. I'm just trained to ask the questions and be the conduit for the energy for change, which is, again, such an honor and a joy and really fun and exciting.
Yes.
Yes, yes, you are.
Well, I'll move on to the next story, and that is mediumship. And interestingly enough, I wanted to bring up that there's clairsalience, which is smell. And that is my second least common, but it almost always comes up when I am working with mediumship, when someone from the other side is trying to get my attention. I was going to go to a training on mediumship in Indiana, and I had so many smells the 2 days before I left. I just kept smelling cigarette smoke and laundry detergent and perfume, all these different things. And I knew it was people. I wasn't quite ready. I'm like, I got to get ready. But it is interesting how that happens. And I thought I'd tell a story that kind of crosses the line of psychic and medium, because this is a woman who was passing away. And this happens to be a gal who had cancer and it had come back. And she was battling it, had other healers, but this was a classmate of mine at Brennan. And so we knew that she was toward the end stages, and we'd been to visit her in Minnesota. And I was blessed to be able to give her a healing. And this had been a very long, very hard journey. She had done a lot of healing. She'd been a student at Brennan. Her partner was a student at Brennan. She had teachers at Brennan working on her. But when we went to visit her, she hadn't slept for 3 weeks, hadn't gotten any decent sleep. And so I was able to do a healing on her. And essentially what I'd read about and what I did, and it worked like a charm, and I've used it a lot of times, is just to gather up all of the chemotherapy and put it into the cancer, to take it out of the rest of the body. And then, of course, to clear, charge, and balance the rest of her energy system. And I did a Hara healing on her too, just to make sure she was all set and ready to go. And she slept through the night that night. But then I would like you to fast forward 6 months-ish. And she'd been through more surgeries, more treatments, more healings. And it was just her time. Sometimes healing is passing away, unfortunately, for those who are left behind. But what happened was, I went into her space with her partner's permission and asked her permission too. And she was so excited that I was there. And I knew that she was probably within a couple of weeks of passing. But when I went in, I talked to her. She was really glad I was there. She was really concerned about her partner. She said, but it's so hard for her. And I explained, it is, but that's only because she loves you and she wants what's best for you. And we had this whole discussion. But what's really important is when I went in, I noticed that her first and second and the beginning of her third chakra had disintegrated. And our first 3 chakras disintegrate when we transition. We take our 4th through 7th with us. The 4th is that bridge between the physical and the spiritual. And so I knew that she was quite close, but I also had a sense that she was holding on. And so I was very inspired. It's nothing that I had thought of before. And I offered to her, I said, would you like to go up and just experience, just to see where it is you're going? And she lit up. And so we just went energetically, and I took her up the light bridge, is what I call it, or the light road, which I've seen so many times. And we got up there. I have chills. So it's still exciting for me too. We got to the top, and she saw a group. I would say there were 7 or 8, 9 people who greeted her there. And when she realized what it was, she just lit up. And I looked back to make sure, and our silver cords were still, hers was still, I knew mine was, but hers was still connected to her body, because my intention was not to walk her there and leave her there. It was just to put her at ease. Mm-hmm. And so at that moment, when she lit up, the veil came down. That was all she needed to see. And I just had a general impression of it because I was watching her, and that's all she needed. I explained, I said, see, your cord's still there. Let's go back down. And we had this discussion a little bit about, okay, that's where you're going. You're ready. Don't hesitate. And she passed away about a day and a half later. And I didn't know how long that would be, because I don't think there's a timeline for each chakra to dissolve. But I think one of the really important things too was I was able to give that story to her partner and put her at ease and let her know that her partner who passed away was at peace too.
I'm so touched by that, Janet. I'm so touched. That is just amazing to be able to guide someone up just to get a taste of the peace and the love they'll experience. That is so beautiful.
It was incredible.
When you said the veil came down, that was all she needed to see. That's the moment all the chills came in for me. What a gift you gave her.
Yeah, I have chills again.
If anybody's hearing this kind of concept for the first time, I just want to make clear that I have heard this phenomena the story of this kind of thing happening at death so many times from so many different places and people that I fully trust that this is something many of us or all of us have to look forward to when we pass, being greeted by loved ones.
I'm so glad you said that. I totally agree. Yeah, that this place where those of us who meditate and are search seekers and get to experience that, to know that that's where we'll be, or somewhere even higher vibration, is a gift.
A gift, a comforting gift. Absolutely.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, I think that's a really good segue for me to move on and tell a story. And this is my family. And it's over 3 years, a period of three. Well, it skips a lot, but a period of 3 years. So my father was 97 and he was under the care of hospice. And I went to take my dog, Fletcher, who was a miniature golden doodle. And we all know how lovable golden retrievers and labs are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
my dog had been diagnosed with cancer. And it was in his right leg. He was given 2 months to live. And I already told you this is going to last 3 years. So that tells you something about that. But to go back to the beginning of the story, I was set to get up at 3 a.m. to catch a flight to go to California to go to a week of Brennan classes. Well, I took my dog over to my parents to take care of him for me. And I'd forgotten the food. His food was in the freezer at home. Well, while I was there, there was a caregiver who was feeding him, and my dad started coughing and coughing and coughing, and he was really uncomfortable with it, but it wasn't too bad yet. So I ran home to get the dog food, came back, and he was still coughing. And I thought, there's something wrong. And the nonprofit that I had been the executive director for was working with the aging population. So I was reasonably familiar with what to expect. And so I called the hospice nurse, and it was a gift that she was able to come and stay with them. I was there until about 10 o'clock. And by then she'd said, well, maybe he doesn't have as long as we thought. I'd say he's got maybe 2 months left to live, because this is not what you would expect. Well, she tried giving him, they have these little kits they give you, and it's got a morphine tablet. And she said, we'll put this under his tongue and he'll be fine. It didn't work. They had to use something stronger. And that's what pushed her to saying that. So to get along in the story here, I went home at 10 o'clock. My brother was there. The nurse was there. My mom was there. And I hadn't packed yet because I was going to pack that evening. So I didn't get to sleep until about midnight. And of course I went to sleep thinking, oh, and my brother had texted me and said, she's changed it. She thinks he's got about 2 weeks left. So I went to bed thinking, do I go to California? Do I not go to California? Do I go to California? Do I not go to California? And I didn't go to sleep till about midnight. And at 1:30 in the morning, I woke up like someone had slammed a door or screamed in my ear, and everything was dead silent. You couldn't hear a car. You couldn't hear anything. And I sat up and I looked around and I thought, did Dad just pass away? I thought, nah, she said 2 months and then she switched to 2 weeks. It's not that. So I laid down and I went back to sleep. It was 1:34. 3 o'clock, my alarms goes off and I'm like, well, do I go or I not go? I picked up my phone and I had a text from my brother at 1:36 saying that my father had passed away. And he had passed away so peacefully, none of the death rattle breathing, nothing. He passed away so peacefully that my brother had to say to the nurse, I think he might be gone. You need to check his pulse.
Wow.
And then I got, this is not even the best part yet. I got up and I walked over to my desk because I had a list of things I needed to pack at the last moment. And he came to me. And I need to describe my father a little, because my father was a very productive man in his life. He was a very godly man. He was a very ethical man. He was very serious. He'd been in the Marine Corps, both the Second World and the Korean War. He was an attorney. He was a legislator. He was director of the executive branch for the state of Oregon. You know, and this guy had accomplished a lot in his life, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so he could be a pretty serious guy, but later in his life, he had a really good, his sense of humor came out. Anyway, it wasn't what I was expecting. And he comes, I'm just standing in front of my desk, and here's my dad at, I don't know, 30 or 40 years old. And he goes, I'm trying to show my hands. He's like, this to me. And then
Oh my gosh.
call an angel
Uh,
backflip, and he goes around to the right and he comes up and he does it again, like with his hands, like, you can't believe this. And he does a left flip and he comes up and he goes, tell mom it's even better than we thought it would be. And
oh my God.
Wow.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm choked
I
up
mean,
right now. I
I'm,
can't speak.
yeah, I have tears.
Oh,
I'm smiling. I'm blown away. Like,
and you
oh
can
my
imagine what it
gosh.
meant to my mom to hear that, because my
oh my
mom
God.
has a strong belief in God, but she doesn't have the experiences that we have. Yeah.
Let me just say for anyone who couldn't see Janet on the screen,
Yeah.
she had her hands up, imitating her dad, her hands out, fingers spread, and a big old smile, like pure joy on her face. That's how her dad showed up for her.
Thank
Yes.
Wow.
you. Yeah. And so then I need to add more to this story. So Fletcher, my dog, was a very special dog. I have zero doubt that he was an angel given to me to remind me what unconditional love was. He was a huge part of my healing path. He was almost 14 years old when he died. But he was very, very close to my dad. My dad always loved dogs, but he would always say, this dog is so special. This is such a special dog. And he was in one of those lift chairs at the end, and he was too frail at 97 to have Fletcher on his lap anymore. Fletcher was a mini, but he weighed like 45 pounds, so he was not a tiny dog. And he was too high. He could just barely touch the fuzz on top of his head. And he used to have him sit next to him, and you could just tell my dad really missed that. So fast forward almost 3 years, and I knew Fletcher was getting close to going, and I do animal communication as well. And so I showed Fletcher, and by showing him, I mean in my mind's eye and his mind's eye, I took him up the light bridge and I showed him that it wasn't scary. And I did that, I believe, 3 times. And he was one of those souls that I'm not sure he would have been scared anyway, but I wanted to be sure, because my biggest fear was that I would put him down too early or let him live so long that he suffered. And I really didn't want either. And so
Mhm.
Fletcher made sure it was perfect. Thanksgiving night, his tumor, okay, so I'm going to see if I can show you. His leg was about this big around. I could go like this around his leg.
So it's like, what, an inch?
Yeah. And by the
Okay.
time he died, the tumor was so big that I could not get both hands around his leg. And
Oh
Wow.
but so
my.
he was kind of swinging it. But he was still happy. He had pain medication, and I took him to the vet, and she kept reassuring me. And you guys can imagine, you love dogs, and
Yes,
lots
we
of
do.
people,
Mhm.
sure. But what happened was, by quote unquote coincidence, I changed the blanket on the bed. I always kept a blanket, so it's because he slept on the bed with me. It was easy to wash. And I woke up in the morning and there was what looked like serum and blood mixed together, smeared on. I usually had a brown blanket and I'd put an off-white blanket on. So coincidentally, ha ha, I could tell that he had
Mhm.
bled. And so I checked his tumor and it had ulcerated. So I called the day after Thanksgiving. My vet is a friend, but she was not in the office. She happened to pick up the phone. I told her what happened. She said, it's very clear. This is it. It will only get worse. You need to let him go. I said, okay. We set an appointment for Monday. I'm going to start crying. Ooh, we had 3 days for me to bawl my eyes out and say goodbye. Um, Best dog. I've had really good dogs, and he was the best dog I've ever had. Smart and tractable, just wanted to please, went with me to the office. He was with me everywhere I ever went, except when he stayed with my mom and dad while I went to class. And anyway, Monday came, my mom was here, both of my adult sons came over, and he was at the top of the stairs, because you come up a few stairs when you come in my front door, and the vet came in and he went nuts, wagging his tail. He was like, this is like a party, all my favorite people are here. He didn't know she was there to put him down, of course, but I had taken him for a long walk, and made sure he had a treat. And she gave him the sedative, and we let him lay down where he wanted to. He thought he might go to my bed. He didn't. He got on his little dog bed right at the top of the stairs and was very calm. And she gave him the medication, and he passed away again. No breathing, no throwing up, nothing, just passed peacefully with me holding him, petting him, talking to him, reassuring him. Okay, here comes, whew, here I go again. So takes off running like he hadn't been able to run in years, running up the light bridge. And there's my dad at the top. And I thought he would call him and say, Fletcher, but he said something that was exactly what my dad would say. He said, come on, boy. And he ran up the light bridge and they were reunited. And it was like I was bawling. And it was done. And it was done perfectly. He didn't suffer. It was very clear to me that what I needed to do. It was so beautiful.
Oh my God. Uh,
Yeah.
I wish I had my tissues next to me.
I have one.
Oh.
Wish I could share.
Right?
Yeah, it
I'm
was
just so touched, Janet.
it
So
was
touched. Like, you know,
so magical. And it was that same, of course, I can't really describe it, but it was the same exact place I took Terry to. We go up, and there's just this place when you know you're there, and the people who are there and are meant to be there are there to greet you. And there's no fear, there's no pain. It's just all joy.
Oh man, I wish we had that experience all the time on this end of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
right?
hard for those. Yeah, and I'm sure you guys too. I would say my most common healing clients are grief, anxiety, stress, those things in that realm, panic attacks. So many people experience that, and so many people can't let go of the grief. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something we all carry to some degree. And you know, it's not even my dog or my dad, and that just really, really struck a chord with me. Oh
Yeah.
Yeah.
man, how wonderful that they passed peacefully, that your dad was there to greet your dog and comfort your mom when he passed. And just the story is going to
Yeah.
be running through my head for some time, I think.
Yeah.
So,
And
so
the little
beautiful.
Thank you. The little things that are amazing are how those who have transitioned show us how familiar it is. When I was a little girl, my dad would come home and he wore a suit and tie. He was an attorney, and he'd always hike his pants up so he didn't split the knees out and squat down. And I'd run, this is when I was like 2 or 3, and I'd run across the kitchen into his arms. That's exactly what he did to greet Fletcher.
Right? It's just so undeniably him.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And he's come to visit other times, as has Fletcher. But like I picked my sister up from the airport and I said to my sister, do you smell dad's tobacco, pipe tobacco? And she's like, no. I said, I'm getting a really strong sense of it. I opened the door to see if it was out there. You still doubt, right? Nowhere, nowhere. And then I said, oh, it's gone. And then as soon as I said it was gone, it came back. I knew it was my dad. And then I tuned in, and he was just so excited that we were together and were aware of him.
I love that so much. I identify with that because my mother's on the other side, and one
I'm
of the
so-
first signs I got of her was smelling roses. And she loved roses. So, and it still happens from time to time. But yeah, it's so beautiful to have. And, you know, it's not, I don't have any roses around me when I smell it. So, yeah,
And aren't
just
you
letting you
so
know they're there.
grateful? So grateful that she made the effort
Yes,
to connect with you and that you have the ability to
exactly.
receive it.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes,
Like, this is really highlighting how much of a gift it is to have these high sense perceptions open and available to us to use to be able to have these experiences.
Yeah,
yeah. And also
absolutely.
to share with other people who don't have them, you know, who listen to a podcast or read a book about these things so that they know they exist and that it's not just the end when you die and people don't know. There's a lot of fear and anticipation and, yeah, just to give people peace of mind and also reassurance that it's not really the end, you know, but
Absolutely.
it's hard for those left here to
It is.
process all that grief and to process the physical pain of what happened or taking care of our loved ones. So there's a lot of emotion involved in it.
There really is. And I think that's, as I've told you to, my incarnational purpose is to be a healer. But I've had a newer calling to speak, and it's just exactly that, Sophia, to let people know it's possible. So maybe they aren't interested in developing their abilities, or, I mean, I think everyone has them, but to be able to offer
Right.
that to people. And I'll tell one more short story along those lines. I was working on my sister. I had never worked on her before. She was here in town, and it was a really quick session. And at the very end, she had lost a son. She has 4 boys, and her third son had passed away of an accidental overdose on medications given to him for CPTSD by the VA, but he was military.
Oh man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yes, it was heartbreaking. But anyway, so I'm finishing up, and it seems like there are two different places where entities will join me and try to give a message to the person that I'm working on. I was working on her at the end. You guys will know the 6th level, and that's a very high level. Out of 7 levels, I was at the 6th level. And I knew that her son had joined us. And I could tell that he was a very high vibration, a very high soul. And he kind of stood back. Usually they'll come in closer, but he stood back and it was very bright, but I knew it was him. And I was a little hesitant to share with her because it seemed so weird, which it often does. And I said, okay, I am a little uncomfortable sharing this with you, but there's something about peanut butter sandwiches. And then I was like, oh, he just told me that even peanut butter sandwiches are good here. And she smiled quietly, and I finished the healing. And when we were done, she said he hated peanut butter. This was a kid who was wiry and could eat anything you could put in front of him. And he hated peanut butter. He would go hungry before he would eat peanut butter. And for her, that simple message was a paradigm shift for her. And she's extremely spiritual. She's been meditating in part of an Eastern religion since she was 22 years old, and she's 7 years older than I am. So that gives you an idea of the impact this can have on people. And I only
Wow.
do that within the context of healing. I don't offer like mediumship appointments because that is healing. And for a while I was a little bit, mediumship is more parlor tricks. I don't know if I would. And then I realized the impact it has on my clients. And I took that back in a big way, and have really embraced any opportunity to bring through messages during healings. I'll tell you one more on
Mm.
along those lines. And I was working on a gal, and a name came through to me as I was clearing and charging her like second, third chakras somewhere in there. And that's the other place that I often have people come in. And I waited till I was done because, I always ask 3 times to make sure that I'm getting it. And I heard the name, what I thought was Janine or Jean. And so after the healing, and there's another story within this same healing I'll go back to, but after the healing, I said, do you know somebody named Janine? I got Janine or Jean. I said it was a mother figure. And she said, well, my aunt is Jean, but I'm not that close to her. So she's searching. Here we are playing charades again. And then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden she says, oh, my mom's Janice. My mom's crossed over and she's Janice. And I said, well, she was here and she just wanted you to know that she loved you and she's with you. Then I get to the 6th level uplift where I'm getting ready to close the aura and seal it all in. And this was one of the funniest ones I've ever gone. This was very much a male entity, and he came very close in and he yelled the name like, Jordan. I mean, I could not miss it. And I was like, okay, Jordan. And that's all I got. But it was a male in angel form. And afterwards, I talked to her and she said, that is when I was pregnant with my son, Jonathan. I was pregnant with twins, but one of them sloughed off and disappeared. And it was far enough along that I knew that. And Jordan was the twin, and she'd been trying to get in touch with him ever. And by that time, Jordan was maybe 30. So it had been lots of years. And she was a spiritual woman, but had never been able to make connection.
Wow.
Wow. That's amazing. So Jordan was unborn. Is that the.
Yes. Jordan was the twin who, sometimes you don't really know why even, but apparently I can't remember what the statistic is. It's like a third of twins or half twins, one will slough off and just be reabsorbed. Yeah, just for whatever
Oh,
reason,
wow.
that was their
Mm.
choice, there was something caused that to happen.
That's just so amazing. I empathize with how she just, felt so validated, and what she prayed for was answered in that moment, that he's okay, and that message came through and she could feel him and feel it like he's at peace and he's trying to make contact with her because she was trying to make contact with him.
Right.
So that's just so beautiful.
Truly such a gift.
Yeah, and what an honor to
Absolutely.
be the concierge, whatever, the go-between between them to be able to give her that message after 30 years. And I didn't know who he was. I was kind of giggling because of the way he was just really bold, and he was making sure his message was given to his mom.
Wow.
Yes, an
So
honor and a
powerful.
privilege.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I will move into animal communication. You've already heard my story about Fletcher. But I've also worked with cats and horses, and this is a story about a horse. I grew up having horses, but I haven't had my own. But I have a dear friend who always has 4 to 8 horses, and I'm fortunate enough that I get to go out there and hang out with them. And first, the horse that I call my horse, and if you're not familiar with horses, there's a thing called a heart horse, and that is a horse of a lifetime. It's the one that you connect with and you can never replace. And there was a horse that she owned that was actually her husband's horse named Juvenile, and they got him when he was 3. He was black with a white star. He was my baby. He rode like a rocking horse. Well, I was in such a tough place after a divorce, and a lot of other things were going on in my life, that when he got old and they had to put him down, that I could not, which is not like me, I could not go say goodbye to him. I just could not take one more thing. And so I always kind of regretted that I wasn't able to say goodbye to him because we were very close. And I could never connect to him. And that always really bothered me. And I was actually at a presentation by 3 psychics and mediums when I'm going to start crying again. When he came, and I was thinking about him because one of them was an animal communicator. And he, just like he always did, he came up from behind me and rested his jaw on my shoulder. And I knew he
Oh,
was there. And I have not since bonded with a horse. I've ridden horses, but not as much. I haven't been as in tune. And my friend bought a new horse, and his name was Big John, and he was in Missouri. He's a Missouri foxtrotter. He's also really tall, and he's really sweet. And I had only met him a couple times, and she said he's really in my pocket, like he was driving her nuts. He was so close all the time, she couldn't get away from him. Well, we talked about it a little bit, and she had bought him online at an online auction, and it was an accident. She was looking and thinking about buying him, got kicked off the internet, went to get back on, and thought she was clicking on viewing him again and bought him. So she nicknamed him, or she started calling him Oops as a kind of a joke. So I tried to work with him on that, and I didn't get very far. But that night, he came to me in the middle of the night and explained to me that it really hurt him. Like he felt like he was going to get sent away again, that he, oops, like that he was the mistake, not that it was her mistake.
mm.
And I explained to his owner, who is my friend, and she changed his name to Handsome. And he is in a very good place now. And he is the horse that I am starting to bond with as though he was the other horse. And he is this, if you can imagine this, like, star athlete who's this big, manly guy, and all the girls are after him. But inside, he's just this sweet teddy bear with a broken heart. And that is Handsome. And so he is still very cuddly and sweet, but not glued to people, if you know what I mean.
Wow, that is so amazing to me. I mean, the power of words there. I did an animal reading for Brandon's brother, and he makes these funny voices, and he's making the voice for the horse, so it's supposed to be the horse's voice, and the horse is actually a pony. But the pony took on that persona that his brother is
Yeah.
bringing forward for social media. So it's just interesting to me that this name that was given, carries weight, carries meaning, and a vibration, and he could feel that. So
Yeah,
Absolutely.
vibration is what was coming to me. It's like it's the intention behind the word, and it's felt by the animals, and that's really cool to recognize. And then there's another little detail in your story that I really took interest in, is that you, after telling all these wonderful stories you've told so far, you can connect with your horse. And I think that might be comforting to people, because I've heard that several times, like, someone in my family, a pet, a loved one has passed away, but I can't connect with them. I just can't connect with them.
mhm.
And it's okay. It sounds like the time will come, and it doesn't mean anything negative. They're probably okay. And you were able to eventually get that connection. So I'm really happy to hear that.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought it up. And I think what interferes is our attachment to that outcome. We want it so badly we're in our own way that we just they're probably communicating with us and we just can't hear them because it means so much to us. It's definitely harder in the things that are the closest to me.
Absolutely. There's a lot of psychics who will get psychic readings for themselves because they're the hardest client for them to read.
Yep. Same with
You
healers.
took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, I have one final category, and that is channeling. And what I would say is that channeling for me, it can happen on purpose when I'm sitting in my meditation chair. I can ask a question and get channeling, and I typically write it or record it. But when I'm in a healing session, since I only use these for other people in sessions, the channeling will just come to me. And I will tell the story of a young man, 43 years old, who had an incredible spiritual experience not even a year ago now. He has done some psychedelics assisted, like with trained people, and that got him to become sober. He has a background of a lot of addiction and alcoholism and has a long history of trauma. And he's been on this spiritual quest since last summer. And so he started coming to me as a healing client as well. And the first time I worked on him, I got up around his second and third chakras, and I started getting these very simple messages for him. And they were coming from the divine. They were coming from my guides and his guides. And they were saying, you are exactly where you need to be on your spiritual and healing journey. We love you. You are our brother. And he started sobbing. Those were exactly the words that he needed. And once, which happens a lot, once I acknowledge the channeling coming through, I'm not remembering the other, but there were probably 6 different messages that came through. And so later I asked him, I said, that seemed to really resonate. Was that what you needed to hear? And he said, exactly what I needed to hear.
Oh,
So beautiful.
that is so beautiful. And that is exactly how it works. At Barbara Brennan School on Sundays, they would do a goddess meditation, and the teachers would go down each row of students and give them a mini healing. And the teacher at my very first one, she leans forward and whispers in my ear, "Have no doubt you are of the light." And then I just started bawling my eyes out, and I watched her as she goes down the whole row, and she didn't speak to anybody else, just to me. And it was exactly what I needed to hear. So I've had that experience, and it's like the key that unlocks the doorway for the grief to flow and to lighten your load. So I'm really glad that he was able to get that experience with you.
That's awesome. And the only other thing I might add is that young man, when I worked on him, it was toward the end of his first session, and I was in the lower left quadrant. So as you look at someone, probably just inside their hip on your right is where I saw it. And there was a huge thought form there. I understood I sensed that it was related to the abuse that he'd had. And there was a cluster of thought forms there. And one of them again was, I'm going to say 6 inches long and 3 inches in diameter. It was huge. I have never seen that big of a thought form. And it was ready to come out, and I pulled it out. And again, he sobbed. He just was letting loose. And there were I couldn't tell how many, I'm going to say 6 or 10 smaller ones still in there at that point. And afterward, when the healing was over, he said that was the equivalent of his experience with ayahuasca.
Wow.
So that's how
huge.
powerful energy healing is. Yeah, probably the most validating thing a client has ever said to me because he was so in tune. But, and also really encouraging that we can offer that as energy healers without people having to travel to Costa Rica and use ayahuasca even, not that I'm saying they shouldn't do that. I'm not passing judgment on that, but just that is how much power there is in the work of divine energy.
Yeah.
Can be done other ways.
It's like providing a safe space for these people who use their free will and choose to show up to do their own shadow work and be witness to that for it to unfold. And it's really tremendous, especially when you're getting to these levels that you've been talking about today. So Really, really appreciate hearing all of these stories.
Thank you.
Deep, deep work. That's
Yeah.
deep work.
And with that, we'll move into the soulful send off. And I'll start here. And I don't even know where to start. Janet, this has been tremendous. This whole podcast recording has been a healing journey for me. I feel like I released a lot of grief that I carry. So I'm really grateful for having that experience while just sitting here listening to your stories. This is the first time that I have cried with a guest on the podcast, and I was just speechless. It's been a long time where I've had to remind myself that I can go to the energetic level of Hara to be present in what I need to do and not be lost in the emotions, because I was getting lost there. I was just so touched by your stories. You know, there's so many pieces that really stuck out, and one of them is the suffering that everybody walks through on this planet. And it reminds me of the phrase Omane Padme Om, which was first described to me by the sound healer Tom Kenyon, and he translated it as the sentient being in me who suffers recognizes and sees the sentient being in you who suffers. And it's a common experience we all share, and many of us spend a lot of time in life pretending that we don't, or finding ways to not be in touch with the suffering. But your stories have really highlighted the depth of suffering that people carry, and you truly are a guide in this world. And I'm glad you're able to own that and see yourself in that way, because there's power in that. And it certainly wasn't presented in any sort of egotistical way. It was purely from the heart. And I really felt that.
Thank you.
Your stories, you told them with such strength. I'm over here. Again, I said this earlier, it's not personal stories to me. And I'm wishing I had tissues near me. I'm wiping my face on my sleeves. I can't speak. And you're just going on with such poise and strength. And I was really struck by that. And the last little comment I'm going to make is I had a snap to the recording on the time clock at 4401. And the most light number for Sophia and I, and we learned this from medical medium, is 144. So seeing 4401, I think, was the guide's way of just letting us know that they're here, and the light is surrounding and supporting all these stories today. So thank you truly for being here and telling all of your stories.
It's been my pleasure. I'm so grateful, and I love connecting with you, and I hope that the stories uplift the people who are listening to your podcast.
I'm sure they will. And I will continue
Absolutely.
to echo them through my mind and integrate them and uplift myself with them as well.
And just one other thing,
Yes.
4s and 1s are my numbers. I get 4s and 1s, have for years. I'll look at the clock.
Awesome.
444 or 1144, or it's always 4s and 1s, almost always.
Yep. I got 4s tattooed on my arm.
Cool.
Beautiful. Well, I'll go next. You're such an inspiration, Janet. Thank you so much for telling your stories, for being a medium, being a channel, just being who you are, channeling the light, bringing it forward so that we can all heal. And whether you do a personal session with someone or they just hear you speak your stories on this podcast, you bring healing to the world. And you do it with such grace. Very humble and very strong, as Brandon said. And it's these stories of humanity, of who we've been in past lives, who we are in this life, the hardships that we face. We're all human. And it's just, you bring that like human connection in, and you also connect with the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom. And I feel like it's just a energetic connection to all life. And you're very tapped in to all of it. So thank you for sharing your stories and for bringing your gifts into this world in such a beautiful way.
Thank you. It's been my privilege, my honor, and my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Aspen Roots.
Visit us at aspenroots.love.